Marcus Taylor had grown accustomed to walking into rooms where people underestimated him, but that didn't mean it stung any less. On a humid Thursday morning, he stepped into the grand marble lobby of Franklin First Bank, the very same institution he had banked with during his early career before building his empire. His tailored navy suit and polished Oxfords reflected a man of stature, but prejudice often blinded people to more than appearances. He carried a leather portfolio under his arm, containing documents for a straightforward request: a loan approval for one of his smaller subsidiaries expanding into renewable energy. As he approached the counter, the young teller looked him up and down, her polite smile twisting into something more performative than genuine. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone clipped. Marcus gave a nod, presenting his paperwork with quiet confidence. Instead of reviewing it, she let out a soft laugh and shook her head. "Sir, I think you're in the wrong place. This bank doesn't process accounts like this. Maybe you should try a credit union or another local branch." The words cut sharper than she knew, and her eyes flickered with the assumption that a black man in this bank lobby could never be a major player in finance. Marcus, calm but curious, leaned in slightly. "I have an appointment with your loan officer," he replied firmly, yet politely. Before the teller could answer, the branch manager, a balding man with an oversized tie and a permanent scowl, stormed over. "What's the issue here?" the manager barked. The teller gestured toward Marcus, rolling her eyes as if she had already endured too much. The manager gave Marcus a long, dismissive look before puffing up his chest. "We're busy here," he said sharply. "Unless you're here for a regular deposit or withdrawal, I suggest you leave." His words weren't just cold, they dripped with disdain, loud enough for the other customers to hear. A few turned their heads, whispering behind cupped hands, while Marcus stood still, his expression unreadable. He wanted to correct them, to show the paperwork proving his status as CEO of Taylor Global Capital, a firm whose assets dwarfed this bank's entire holdings. But he didn't. Years of navigating spaces that judged him on his skin instead of his accomplishments had taught him patience. He gathered his documents slowly, tucking them back into his portfolio, and gave a small, knowing nod. "Understood," he said softly, turning away without raising his voice. The lobby felt heavier with silence as he walked toward the door, every step echoing off the marble floor. Outside, the city buzzed with life, cars honking and people rushing past, oblivious to the quiet humiliation he had just endured. But inside Marcus's mind, a plan was already taking shape. Revenge wasn't always about shouting or fighting back in the moment. Real revenge, he knew, was about control, about ownership, about rewriting the story so thoroughly that the people who once dismissed you would have no choice but to respect you. And as he tightened his grip on the portfolio, Marcus decided that this bank, the very one that had just turned him away, would soon learn exactly who he was. Not just a man they could brush off, but a billionaire with the power to own them outright. The fire had been lit, and Marcus Taylor wasn't going to let it die out. Marcus didn't waste time after leaving that bank humiliated. Back at the headquarters of Taylor Global Capital, a sleek skyscraper overlooking the heart of the city, he called his senior analysts, lawyers, and investment strategists into the boardroom. The glass walls reflected the skyline behind him as he stood at the head of the table, calm but deliberate. "I want everything you can dig up on Franklin First Bank," he said. "Financials, board members, shareholders, assets, liabilities, scandals. Leave no stone unturned." His staff exchanged glances, but knew better than to ask why. When Marcus gave a directive, it meant something monumental was in motion. Within 48 hours, a thick dossier landed on his mahogany desk, and as he flipped through it, his lips curved into the faintest of smiles. The bank's exterior gave the illusion of strength, marble floors, expensive suits, and brass plaques, but its foundation was crumbling. Years of mismanagement had left them bleeding money. Their customer base was shrinking, bad investments piled high, and their technology infrastructure was embarrassingly outdated. The final nail? A looming regulatory fine for discriminatory lending practices that could bankrupt them if they didn't find a strong backer. They were desperate, though they hid it well. Marcus saw not just an opportunity, but poetic justice. He began acquiring shares quietly, funneling purchases through shell companies and trusted partners. No one on the board realized that while they were laughing in their boardrooms, sipping scotch, and congratulating themselves on being untouchable, Marcus Taylor was silently becoming their largest stakeholder. By the time they noticed, it would be too late. Weeks later, Marcus walked back through those same doors, but this time it was different. He wasn't there as a man seeking a loan, he was there as the soon-to-be owner. Dressed in a charcoal gray suit with a red tie that signaled power, he entered the boardroom of Franklin First Bank for a meeting arranged under the guise of a strategic partnership. The very same branch manager who had dismissed him weeks earlier nearly choked when he saw Marcus stride past him, flanked by attorneys and advisors carrying thick binders. Inside, the bank's board of directors sat stiffly, unaware of what was about to unfold. Marcus presented his offer with precision: a massive cash infusion, a full restructuring plan, and access to international markets his firm already dominated. For a bank struggling to keep its head above water, it was salvation. The directors whispered among themselves, greed and desperation clouding their judgment. Not once did any of them remember the black man they had humiliated at the front counter. To them, this was just a lifeline from a powerful investor. And when they signed the documents a few weeks later, handing over control in exchange for survival, Marcus Taylor officially became the majority owner of Franklin First Bank. The very institution that had once told him he didn't belong was now his: every brick, every vault, every dollar. As he left the boardroom that day, papers signed and ownership secured, he thought of the teller and the manager who had sneered at him. Soon, they would learn the truth. This wasn't just business anymore. It was personal, and justice was about to be served on the grandest scale possible. The morning of the announcement arrived like a storm brewing on the horizon, though the city had no idea what was coming. Marcus sat in the back of his sleek black Bentley as it pulled up to the grand steps of Franklin First Bank, the building gleaming under the sun, its marble facade a monument to old wealth and privilege. Reporters were already gathering, tipped off by whispers of a massive shakeup. Inside the branch, staff buzzed nervously. Rumors had spread about new ownership, but no one had connected the dots. Marcus walked through the doors, this time with the commanding presence of a man who didn't need permission. The same teller who once rolled her eyes at him froze in mid-sentence, her face draining of color as recognition set in. The branch manager hurried over, sweating through his suit, stammering, "Mr. Taylor, sir, I didn't expect," but Marcus brushed past him, his polished shoes echoing against the marble as he entered the lobby where employees were assembled. He didn't shout, he didn't need to. His voice carried with quiet authority. "Good morning. As of today, Franklin First Bank is under new ownership. Mine." Gasps rippled through the crowd, whispers rising like wildfire. Marcus paused, letting the words sink in before continuing. "Not long ago, I walked into this very branch seeking the same respect any client deserves. Instead, I was humiliated, dismissed, and treated as if my worth could be judged by the color of my skin." What those individuals didn't realize, he gestured around the room, his gaze locking on the pale-faced manager and teller, was that I was in a position not only to save this bank, but to own it outright. The silence was deafening. Employees who had once followed the old culture of exclusion shifted uncomfortably, while others, the ones who had suffered silently under that same arrogance, straightened with a spark of hope in their eyes. Marcus didn't waste time on theatrics. He handed over a stack of papers to his head of HR. "Effective immediately, we're restructuring this branch and others. Those who believe in respect, fairness, and innovation will stay. Those who think prejudice has a place in business will find the door waiting." The branch manager tried to protest, but Marcus silenced him with a simple look, an unspoken reminder of who held the power now. Cameras flashed as reporters pushed inside, capturing the historic moment. Marcus turned to them and declared, "This isn't just a new chapter for this bank. It's a new chapter for this city. Franklin First will no longer be a place where people are judged by appearance. It will be a place of opportunity, of fairness, of growth. And anyone who doesn't like that can take their business elsewhere." The crowd erupted, some clapping, some stunned into silence, but the message was clear: justice had been served. As Marcus stepped back into his car, watching the flurry of news crews covering the takeover, he felt no anger, no bitterness, only a deep satisfaction. He hadn't just bought a bank. He had turned his humiliation into triumph, proving that the greatest revenge wasn't shouting back at the counter that day. It was owning the entire building and rewriting its future.